All right. Well, here we are for round two, second in the series of Awakening and the Hero's Journey. And the second installment is called Crossing the Threshold. So, talking about that moment and what comes beyond it when we finally enter the unknown. And yesterday's program or recording, we were talking a lot about the barriers to the unknown and so forth. And now we're talking about what it's like when you cross that threshold and what the implications are and what happens afterward.
Yeah. Can be pretty unsettling, huh?
Right. Yeah. Uh, I guess for me, it was, I mentioned yesterday that there was like a breakup before this big shift for me, but the breakup somehow opened up this. It was kind of sort of devastating in a way, but it also opened up uh, this feeling of it kind of started as like a helplessness, but it seemed to open up sort of beyond that. It was kind of like it's kind of like a portal, actually. I mean, I still felt sort of miserable, and at the same time, it was like this new possibility, something fresh, something alive, something almost had something had just been born. Um, I'm not sure at that moment if I knew I had crossed the threshold, but I think I was kind of pushed past the threshold a little bit. Um, I was probably standing at the threshold for quite some time in my life, and that event, for whatever reason, just sort of nudged me a little bit. And then it didn't take me much to step over. I think it was kind of a combined, being pushed over and stepping over sort of thing. And a few things lined up at that point, and gave me some pointers as far as where to look and how to look. But and we can get into that. But the feeling was one of like really wonder. It was this feeling of, and it like it started off with a lot of um, like disappointment from the breakup, in a very short, I mean, talking in a matter of a couple of days or something. And it sort of, there was this wonder, and then the wonder sort of grew. And then the sense of tragedy of the breakup was like getting less and less important somehow. And it just opened this portal. And I was like realizing there's a direction here. There's there's something here. There's some possibility. I didn't know what it was. I really didn't. I didn't know if it was going to be a change for me. I didn't know. I had no idea what its nature was, but I knew it was there, and I knew I had entered something new, and it did feel mysterious. It did feel like the unknown. It felt like a place of wonder, and everything was kind of ordinary around me still, but there was definitely this wonder that was sort of building. So for me, I think at least with that first awakening, that was probably what I would consider crossing the threshold.
Yeah. I'm curious. Was there something in your experience or that you had learned up to this point that allowed you to see that wonder rather than just being consumed by the grief of the loss? Because for me at that age, those losses, and I had a similar breakup around 24, my first real, like felt like I was literally torn in two. It didn't turn me toward the wonder. It turned me toward the looking away.
Hmm.
The nope, I don't want any mystery. I don't want any part of that. And it would be another 30 years before the wonder would. And I'm just curious, what do you think, especially at that early age, what do you think contributed to that? And is there anything that you would point out for people who might be in that same place of just confronting great loss, but not feeling wonder at all?
Yeah, sure. That's a really great question. And it was surprising even to me because I had never experienced anything like this. So it was extraordinary. What came to me immediately when you asked this question were a couple of different things. One is there were definitely breadcrumbs. I kind of talked about this in our last conversation. There were some breadcrumbs. There were some experiences that opened up for very short times something similar to this, but this felt way more all encompassing. But I had experiences of some kind of purity that came maybe, I don't know, 6 weeks after I learned to meditate or something. There was this period of a day or two where things just felt much more in flow and open, and I was just more relaxed than I'd ever been. And I was attributing it to the meditation. I thought it was something about meditation, but it wasn't really, it wasn't getting to the level of identity, and it didn't feel like so much like wonder. It still felt like me, actually. It felt like me having a really good enjoyable experience, but it was a kind of opening. Something like that had happened a few times. In my book, I talk about this conversation I had with a professor in a class, maybe a few years before this, where he was talking about awakening enlightenment in Buddhist terms, and he was a Buddhist, and he was talking about awakening, and I suddenly heard it in a different way. I'd heard about it before, but I didn't. It seemed like a conceptual thing or something. Then this one hit. I was like, oh, you mean like you're talking about me? Like you're saying like I could actually stop suffering. Like then, and I knew what suffering was suddenly. Like, oh my God, all that stuff I've been feeling, that's suffering. That's what Buddhism means by suffering. And so I raised my hand and asked, like, you mean this could actually happen, like in this lifetime? And he, stepped up and said, there's no doubt, and just locked eyes with me. So there was that. There were a few breadcrumbs. I had been kind of interested in Eastern thought, and read the Tao Te Ching and different things, but man, I couldn't make heads or tails of it. Like I read it and I knew there was something there. It was weird. I just knew there
Yeah.
was something there. Yet it literally looked like I was just reading like hieroglyphics. I couldn't, I was like, what the fuck are they talking about? But I knew
Yeah,
it. Something in me was
and
like,
you know
it's
you're
here. I know it's here.
supposed to, but you just like I don't can't,
It
yeah.
was like that. It wasn't even like it wasn't even like poetry where I was like, oh, it's bringing this feeling that's mysterious, but I don't quite get it. It was like, this makes no sense, but something in me was going, it's here though, but I know it's here. Very strange. So I'd had some experiences like that, and then meditation. I had been meditating for about 4 years, and that I think did help. It opened some things up. I think it did help. It opened me to some possibilities. I had done some psychedelics that probably helped. Um, and then the last thing is, and this isn't really something you can choose, but for me, it was just the case. And I really just felt like I had suffered a lot throughout my life beyond the beyond the narrative of my life. I mean, I've met people now who have suffered way more than me in the narrative, like as far as traumas and so forth. I didn't have a lot of that, but I just always felt like something was so off. And that was pretty
Yeah.
pervasive in my life since childhood. So I think all those things for me just kind of accumulated in that moment, and it worked. So
Yeah.
the advice would be, try to do things, to really investigate the nature of your identity any way you can. Like really look into that. Mindfulness, meditation, do these things, but do them with an open mind and an open heart to like really try to get to the root of something about who you are, because you're not going to solve anything in your life unless you really know who you are. Like there's how could you if you don't even know who it is that's really trying to solve this problem of my life. That's part of the key. And then the other thing is, I say this a lot, it's like really take inventory and acknowledge if you're suffering, because it's surprising how easily we can hide our own suffering from ourselves. I've seen this happen with very intelligent people, very high functioning people, even where they didn't think they were suffering. And then a couple of years later, they tell me, you're right. I was suffering and I just somehow overlooked it. I talked myself out of it or something. So being in touch with your own suffering, being willing to recognize that, yeah, I am suffering, is key. So those are the ingredients. Now, there's definitely a component to this that's not up to you. You can't decide like it's going to be today, but I do feel you can really orient toward this. I know you can, and if you really want to pour fuel on the fire, go to retreats, do inquiry, read my book, watch videos of anyone who you feel is really transmitting what we're talking about here. That's pouring fuel on the fire. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And having come at this sort of the long slog way, like wishing for it in my 20s, but not having any clue really that it was actually available, and going the other way toward toward the suffering. Basically, I'm going to go toward the self. I'm going to fix the problem of this self. I'm going to make this self have a happy life. Damn it. And I worked so hard at that. And that's ultimately kind of what drove me to my knees, was there being no there. No matter how hard I worked, no matter what I accomplished, no matter. There was just, it was never gonna do it. And I was talking with somebody earlier today about this, that this is how it is, and we mentioned it yesterday too. You can't get around what's happened and whatever's brought you to this moment, but you can bring a deep curiosity into the unknown at any time, because it's always right here. And the unknown is very confronting for that sense of self, because it relies on definition. This is this is that. I am this, I'm not that. And when you say, I don't know what this is, the next question is, and I don't know who I am. Okay, great. Perfect place to start. And that's what's so magic about the that entrance to the cave, the cave that holds the treasure you seek. It's in the dark, it's in the unknown. But you can't bring the known in there. It won't hold.
Yeah. Yeah. And what a great way to guarantee that you're in the mystery, by seeing and acknowledging that you actually don't know who you are. If you take a really, really good look, you'll realize you don't know in the conventional way we talk about knowing who you are. You can't find it in that way. That is guaranteed to drop you right into the unknown. As you were speaking to it, it was striking me how many parts of the stories and the movies and the novels and so forth that I just love, that really have to do with this exact moment of crossing the threshold, entering the cave, Jesus walking off into the desert for 40 days and 40 nights, and Luke Skywalker telling Yoda, I'm not afraid to go in there. And Yoda says, oh, you will be. Yeah. So many, Dorothy, the tornado taking the house up into who knows where, right? She didn't know where she was going. There's so many beautiful motifs of this, and we know it, so let those be pointers. Like, let art show you this. This is the beauty of art. This is the value of art, is it shows you how to enter the unknown, and it shows you what mystery is, and it shows you how to enter it, so there's so many entry points available.
Yeah. And see it in your own life, when your own house goes up in a tornado, that is part of your journey. Can you be with that instead of turning away from it and trying to make it something? Can you let that be unknown? It's so powerful.
Yeah, what comes to mind is the story you told in that beautiful video that I always recommend people watch, that you recorded right after awakening. You talked about a storm when you were younger. Yeah. Could you tell that story?
Sure. Yeah, I was 19. I had just gotten a diagnosis of a terminal illness, and I was heading from Bermuda to St. Thomas with some friends of mine to help them bring their boat down there. They had a baby, and it was just the two of them, and they needed some help for this 7-day trip. And in the middle of it, we got stuck in a hurricane right in the middle of the Bermuda Triangle. We were 2.5 days from Bermuda. The sailboats don't move that fast. There was nowhere to go and no way to get away from it. It just came up in the middle of the Atlantic, and all of a sudden it was on top of us. And I had been, just the week before, so worried about this terminal diagnosis I had gotten, and only to be now literally facing death with each wave. It was 50-foot waves, 100-mile-an-hour winds. So we would slide down into the bottom of these waves in between them in the trough, and it would be almost no wind. And then we get up to the top and it'd be 100 miles an hour. And it's a 5-story wave, right? It was terrifying. And I felt so helpless. And in that moment, I surrendered so deeply for 2.5 days. I was just like, it was only about survival. There was so much fear, but there was nothing for it to grab onto. I lost myself in the situation. And then afterward, it just came barreling back. And I kind of talked myself into this like, oh, well, I just got lucky and nothing really happened, you know? But it was a connection to that deep sense of helplessness you talked about earlier. And instead of leaning towards that and getting curious about it, I did everything I could to go the other way. And so I don't ever want to experience that again. And I built a life of resistance around it, basically. I spent a lot of time refusing the call.
Yeah, there's the archetype in the hero's journey of the barrier guardian, and that's the ego ultimately, right? It's exactly that thing that whispers in your ear, oh, that didn't really happen. Let's just forget about that. Let's look over here where we can build our own life the way we want to build it. And, but that's a little bit thought based, right? and then we get into the whole chasing thoughts. And, we get what it does is it causes a little bit of distance, I think, from life,
Sure. We're all the dragons that guard a hoard of treasure that they can't use.
Right.
Those are all perfect metaphors for the ego.
Yeah.
Smile. This protector of something that's valuable yet useless to the thing that's protecting it.
That is so, I've never heard it spoken that way, but that's exactly it. The ego tells you these horror stories about something it can't even touch, that it's just not, it can't be aware of, and this is where really the rubber meets the road when it comes to the crossing the threshold, because it's really about your relationship with doubt and fear changing, because those are the two pieces of leverage the ego has on you often, are doubt and fear. And fear is such it's such a beautiful thing to learn about, to like directly to be able to enter fear, because you realize that on one side of it, it looks a certain way. It looks like it's a big warning sign saying, don't go here. Once you go through it, it doesn't look like that anymore at all. It looks like a bit of a barrier to entry or something. It looks like a rite of passage once you've moved through it. And you're like, thank God I did this. Thank goodness, thank whoever, just dumb luck, if anything, that I actually crossed this threshold. And that's when your relationship with fear changes.
The doubt props the fear up to being something larger than life, right? When that fear is there, which is a natural emotion we all feel all the time, things are scary. That's totally natural. But doubt goes, that's really bad. We're not going to make it through this. And it tells that story that turns it from being like you talk about an emotion is a sort of sensation and a narrative, right? Well, doubt is the narrative that makes fear debilitating. And it's the ego's most effective weapon, but, oh, dude, no, what if, and seeing through that is possible in the exact same way you see what the mechanism of the self. It's just, you just have to watch. You just have to be curious about what's actually happening. It doesn't take a you're never going to read about it. You're never going to hear the right words in a video that are going to explain it to you. But it's happening every moment right in front of you. What is it? And that is what the unknown really presents, is that, or maybe it's that it takes the mirror away, and you're not looking at this self anymore. You're just looking at what is. And it really gives you the opportunity then to be there. That's how you slay the dragon, or embrace the dragon, however it is in your story. It is that the unknown is key, and that mind identified sense of self just always is creating a known in here that it doesn't even know.
That's a really, really good way of describing it. I've never even considered that relationship between doubt and fear. And I think that's actually right on the money. That's fear is not in and of itself actually a problem. It's intense. It's what it is. It can be, but what makes it a problem is the doubt telling you, right? Holding it up as this massive barrier. And I do feel, and I've said this a lot of times, that doubt ultimately, when you really to cross maybe a different threshold, that's the threshold to really starting to let go directly of the ego structure in real time as the awakening is unfolding. It's really about something like letting go of doubt. It's about seeing how much of a heavy blanket doubt has been, that we've been identifying with doubt. We've literally been using doubt as our best friend. It's been talking in our ear this whole time. We thought, this is helping me. This is keeping me on track in life. But the whole time it's been doubt talking to you. And when you realize, like, wait a minute, I don't have to listen to that. Then the mirror turns around, just like you described. You don't have to look in the mirror anymore and just kind of keep second guessing yourself and doubting and going backwards, trying to go forward. You can just look right into the mystery. And like, that's the wonder I was talking about. It's like, whoa, like it is mysterious, and it's also familiar in a really ancient sort of way. Like, you know what it is, and yet it is mysterious. It is awe-inspiring in the true way of the meaning of that word or that phrase. Humbling, fascinating, sublime, endlessly fascinating, and there's a element of fear to it as well. Sometimes, not always, but there is, and that's also completely okay once you've sort of turned the mirror around, to use your analogy.
But there's also a sense of, for lack of a better word, I'll just call it home, that I noticed in my own life. I had spent so much time looking for something that felt like home, and it was about a place. It was about a life. It was ideas and concepts and locations, and only to find that home is everywhere, because the unknown is everywhere. There is there are places I enjoy more than others, but I don't crave that sense of home anymore, and I don't even associate my actual home with that sense of home. I can feel that same sense of home in a traffic jam or on a crowded plane, or it's now that home feeling is where the unknown is, and it's everywhere, which Beautiful. I never would have expected, that it would have had some sort of almost a comforting embrace to it. And I think that's an aspect of it.
I totally agree. What you're describing is what I often try to label as intimacy. It's very challenging to give this an actual word. Home is very good. Today I reread for the 100th time a quote, one of my favorite quotes by Dogen, a Zen master from 1,000 years ago. And he says something like, "Do not ask me where I am traveling in this or do not ask me where I'm going as I travel this limitless world where every step is home. That's exactly what you're talking about. It
Yeah.
is surprising. It is paradoxical, I suppose. But it doesn't actually matter where I am. It's right in front of my face all the time, and that right in front isn't even a physical place. It's like in the body. It's here. It's so intimate, and it doesn't go away. It can't go away. It can't be gone. It can't be lost. It can't be missing.
Yeah.
And because it doesn't, in one sense, because it doesn't depend upon anything. It's not contingent upon circumstances. That's the beauty of it. So it's like it just arises in every different flavor, and yet it's still home, or it's still just this depth
Yeah.
of intimacy that is unmistakable, juicy. Yeah,
Juicy.
it's juicy.
It's juicy. And I think it's a really good pointer for people who don't experience that in their own lives. Or I think there would have been a time where I would have heard what you just said and thought, oh, sure, for you, like the whole world is magic and everything just opened up and like non-dual, dude. And it's easy to kind of just like go, oh, people have these magical experiences of this, but that's not what we're talking about.
Mm.
It really, what you said at the very end of that, just this gets so right to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the unknown is a very simple thing. It's not something that you're not in already. It's something
Correct.
that your awareness is focused away from.
Mm-hmm.
If it is not a part of your experience, it's just because you're not allowing it to be a part of your experience. It's still there.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, it's totally accurate to say that it's, you can't even really avoid it, but something is trying to avoid it. Actually, there's something, it's a
Yes.
habituated process of avoidance, of dissociation, of whatever, however you want to say it. It's actively trying to avoid this all the time.
Yeah.
Which is probably even more infuriating to hear. And I know the frustration and I understand it. And I will also add that I've gone through several hells to realize this as well. I mean,
Yeah.
in a certain way, like there's a cost to this, but most of those hells are of your own making. It's really just seeing those resistance patterns and realizing how darn useless and self-serving they are, but also how kind of tenacious they are. And to face that can be, really lead you into a lot of intense emotion, frustration, confusion, disorientation. And that's shadow stuff. I mean, that's going to, and we'll delve into that as well, but that's going to be part of this deal. And so, there's a cost to this as well. It's not just serendipity necessarily. And at the same time, it is definitely here already, always. You can't not see it. Your own true nature is watching you look for your true nature. It is literally all the same thing.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier about the level of suffering when you were younger and how your life had just been full of suffering and you were ready to do anything for that to end. And I've heard both you and Adyashanti say, like that awakening and the journey of awakening is no self, all of it is something that you can't want. And I love, that's really beautiful. And I think that messes with a lot of people's perception. How can I not want this thing that I want so bad? And I've also heard you say it is you've gone through hells, and I get that. Same. How would you, I know there's no comparison, but for somebody who is going, wait, I feel like I do want this and I am suffering, but I don't want more hell. I thought like awakening was, what would you say to address that confusion that might be around this moment of facing the unknown?
Yeah. I would say trust the step that's before you. Don't worry about the end game so much. It's kind of like you're walking up a staircase or down a staircase at times, and only the next step's illuminated. You won't know what's beyond that often until you're taking the next step. So be okay with the fact that at this stage of things, and that's in a way why we're putting it in this kind of hero's journey model, this stage of things is entering the mystery. When you enter the mystery, you don't know what awakening is going to be like. You have no clue. You don't know. Even usually once you enter the mystery, once you really cross that threshold, often by that time you've kind of even let go of the idea of awakening, because you realize it's just an idea. Like, I can't actually know what it is.
Yeah.
So it's kind of built into this part where you realize, like, okay, I finally see that what Angelo means when he says you can't, what you think you awakening is really not what it is. I promise it's not. It's just like doubt. It's like doubt. Your mind takes everything and turns it into doubt. So it's going to turn
Yeah.
awakening into doubt even. So when you realize, like, okay, it just can't be what I think it is, you're starting to have a different relationship with thought, which is good. It's a stage of maturity. And with that, you realize, okay, well, what if it's not thought? So meaning I can't imagine it into being, obviously. And I also can't even accurately imagine what it will be like, because it is beyond thought. And I can sense there's something beyond thought, and that is mystery. Now there's only one place to go, and that's the mystery. And that really is crossing the threshold. Crossing the threshold is a leap of faith. And the leap of faith says, I don't even know if Angelo is telling the truth. I don't know if Buddha's telling the truth. I don't know if Adyashanti or all these people who say, like, I don't know if they're telling the truth, but something in me says, I have to take this leap of faith. Like, so it has to be on instinct. You know, you really, this is the part where you really just learn for the first time in your life to fully trust your instinct. And it feels, again, that's the unknown. That is stepping right into the unknown. And so from there on, it kind of takes care of itself. So what I would say, just to summarize this to somebody who, feels like, no, I really do want it. It's like, yes, the instinct behind that drive you have is right on the money. Trust it. And your idea of it is not the instinct. Your idea is what your mind is trying to turn it into, to turn you back around. Don't turn back around. Don't worry about the beliefs and thoughts about what it's going to be like. Trust your instinct. Your instinct will carry you right into the unknown, and then you're okay. And then all this stuff, all these weird things we say and paradoxical things we say and stuff, it'll be clear to you at some point. And you may or may not even use the same words we use. It won't matter, but you'll know exactly what we're talking about. And you won't want to go back. It won't be something you would give back if you could. So you're okay. But it's really about learning to trust the instinct and seeing that there can be a distorting mechanism of thought through the use of doubt, ultimately, where it gets co-opted into something it's not. And that's what we mean by, largely, that's what we mean by, you can't have the awakening you think you're going to get. It's not like that.
Yes. That's a great way to put it. And I love what you said about instinct, because that is really what the hero's journey connects us to. It is that journey of a natural, actual awakening to the human apparatus that we are existing in. All of it. It is, we're not apes. We are apes, but we're not like gorillas. We're not dolphins. We're not whales. We are the unique manifestation of what humans are. And the hero's journey is about fully realizing your own humanness, all of it. That grow up, wake up, show up thing that Ken Wilber talks about again. It's like, that is what the hero's journey is. It's a way of coming in. It's an initiation into the fullness of our humanity, an awakened initiation. And instinct just comes
is all of
online
that.
with that. Yeah.
It is all that, absolutely. And when that humanness is infused with mystery, then you actually realize, I don't really want to use the word source, but I'm going to. You realize the source of it is that mystery. The source of your humanness is this mystery. And then it's animated with this mysterious whatever. And everything is. That's when you're living in the world of, it does feel rather magical in a certain way, but everything that has a wide bandwidth of experience. It's not just happiness and good all the time. It feels like all kinds of things, but it definitely feels sort of magical in that the animating force behind everything is clear to you and it is deeply mysterious and deeply alive and non-dualistic, then and only then really do you fully inhabit your humanness, in my experience. Before that, what you inhabit sometimes is a kind of caricature of humanness. And we've seen that can go really bad, right? Like we can justify a lot of things by telling ourselves, well, this is just human or something, and so forth.
Yeah.
So the ego has its own version of anything we say, anything you and I say in this whole series, the ego has its own version of it and it can co-opt it, so that's
Yeah.
why we talk about, you really have to penetrate the identity structure. You really have to go for the identity and see what's really, really going on there and what's not going on for all of this to come full circle and come to fruition.
Yeah. And what I particularly like about approaching it as a natural evolution of our humanness is that we can see it for what it is. Like the ego's sense of self and all of that is a part of growing up as a human now in this world that we're in. It's just the way it goes. But also growing out of it or fully into it or however you want to like frame it, but seeing it as just a part of all of it, not the defined separate self that like I'm me, you're you, get away from me because I got mine and I know you got yours, but I'm going to protect my that whole thing that we get locked into as kids. We can grow into the fullness of who we are through the same thing that got us to where we started looking for more, through whatever brought on all that suffering and inspired that seeking. That's all a part of it. Let's just keep going. It isn't like get rid of all that and now there's this new thing. It just all gets seen as one thing.
Yeah. Also, I feel like pointing out that this stage of things, again, it does reoccur throughout parts of this process and throughout other areas of life, but this crossing the threshold and entering the mystery also brings to mind certain archetypes, your allies, right? And the wizard, or we could say the magician archetype, the sage archetype. These are very important archetypes. And when you are in the mystery, like when you're really just taking step after step into the unknown, this is where for me, it became really critical that the right person showed up at the right time. They actually showed up in book form. And I talked about this in our last recording, but without that, maybe it wouldn't happen when I was 24. I don't know. I mean, it was the right time to pick that book up. I mean, it all felt very, very synergistic. It was really going on instinct. So it really did line up in a way that felt, like I said, synergistic. But without that pointing, I'm not sure I would have sorted it out right then. And it was a Zen teacher from, who's born, I think, in the maybe late 1800s, early 1900s, Yasutani Roshi. It was his words pointing to awakening, pointing through the mystery and showing you what the mystery actually is about and how to fully kind of, in a way, die into that mystery until you really touched into the real. And his pointing was completely, it was so precise. It was completely on point. It was timely. It was right where it needed to be. And it was so powerful and transformative. So that kind of mystery I talked about, that awe that was kind of accumulating around me, and I could just feel it after the breakup, it became like a laser when I was reading his words. It became like rocket fuel was added to it. It's just like, I know exactly where to go. And it really did feel like an acceleration process. That's the power of meeting the sage. For me, it was the power of meeting. It was unmistakable. Many people can relate to this. People who've read The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle's book, or maybe my book. I'm sure a few people have gotten it from my book as well. Adyashanti, reading the words of Buddha, like bumping into those pointers from the right person who has gone through this process themselves, and that's key. Is unmistakable, and it's you know, it's just grace. It's beyond lucky. So that does come into play with this as well.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what makes great stories, right? You're like it. There's this. I was reading. What was I? Somebody was talking about the Deus ex machina trope in movies, where all of a sudden, like something just happens and saves the day, and it didn't come from anywhere. It doesn't make any sense in the movie. And when it happens in movies, we kind of go, "Oh, that was cheesy." But it's just because it's that far off from how it really manifests in life when we open ourselves up to it. You know, we can be with that curiosity for, okay, what would the difference be if, say, something really challenging was happening in your life and you said, oh, this really sucks, and you just put all your attention into trying to fix a problem versus just sitting up and going, okay, what's here? Who's here? And just asked a question and let that question sit there instead of running through all the ways to fix a thing. And there's no reason you can't do both, even really, because you have to do things. Have to, your house burns down, you have to get another one. You have to call an
Right.
insurance agency. You have to do all those things. Yet it doesn't preclude seeing the beauty, the magic, the sage. And I think that in my own life anyway, it was always like the sage was something that brought me something good, and I think a lot of times the sage is the one that brings you something challenging or something bad, and it isn't maybe a real person even.
Mm-hmm.
It's something else, but it's something that connects you with your own wisdom. And if you are just willing to look, that's what it really took for me, was that curiosity, that willingness, like we talked about yesterday, to look and to not assume and doubt and fret and worry and go into the mind trying to fix a problem.
Yeah. The other aspect to archetypal sort of imagery and so forth that I really love is that um, for me, like my experience is once I started to feel into archetypal energies, I started to notice them in places I wouldn't have thought. Sure, the sage is the Zen master, of course, that's the sage, right? And Buddha's the sage, and Eckhart Tolle, and all, whatever. But also, I can look back at that experience and realize, well, what started the destabilization for me was the breakup, and that young woman that I broke up with, and I could have looked at her and been angry at her for being who she was, or whatever. Or I can look at her and go, that's kind of like the trickster, right? That's kind of like the magician, pulls your rug
Mm-hmm.
out from under you.
Yeah.
Archetypes work in all kinds of ways. Like these archetypal energies work through people. I really see this. It's fascinating, actually. They work through all kinds of energies. So when you start to appreciate that about life, I think you can really start to feel this shift from looking at the world as this dangerous place where there's all these things that could harm us, and these things that we look at and just we look down on and say, God, that could be so much better. Why is it like that? Why is it like this? And politics and all these things. But when you start to look at the world as living energy, like it's just energy, and that the archetypal energies are part of that, you change the world by changing your own perception of it, really. And you can start to recognize, like, if somebody really pisses you off at work, for instance, sure, that could like fortify you, that could turn you into a jerk, you could strike back, you could become cynical, you could that could be lead you down a path of self-destruction, sure. Or it could actually stop you in your tracks and go, wait a minute, that's happened before. I've had other people say that things to me. Oh my God, and that person said it, and my ex-wife said it. And I mean, and I've met people who've had these moments where they realized, oh my God, it's been me the whole time. I'm the one that's blowing relationships up. I'm the one that's ruining friends. Like, so that exact same situation can be a transformative insight, offering you insight and so forth, moment, or it can be quite the opposite. So The difference is in our perception and our willingness to be open to the mystery and to the archetypal nature of all of life.
Yeah. And that's kind of how we find our way into shadow work too, that like looking at those projections that we put out onto these people, onto these tricksters and devils and sages and saviors and martyrs. We're projecting, and that when we can see that, then we can see the the archetype in our own consciousness, our own awareness, and see that the sage isn't not us, the trickster isn't not us, that person at work who you hate with all your fiery hate is not you.
Mm.
And that becomes very destabilizing at first, but then very, very integrating and healing as it starts to make its way into experience and consciousness and goes deeper and deeper. And that projecting stops, and there's just this, I don't know what's there when there's not the projecting.
Yeah. Sometimes I kind of say it's always an inside job, like we project so much outward, but ultimately everything can point back to something in here. One of the most, I would say, transformative things I did, I don't even remember how I figured out to do this, but as far as my interpersonal skills when I was younger, this was before awakening and all that. But I think I just kind of grew up in a family that was kind of argumentative and a little caustic and judgmental and stuff. And I noticed I was like that with people at work sometimes, not always, but I was sometimes. So what I would do is if I felt even the slightest annoyance with anyone, I would stop myself and I'd say, okay, what is it about that person that reminds me of me? And at first it was so hard. I did not want to do it. My mind would just be like, no, they're not like me. They're this, I'd be like, okay, but what is it about them that reminds me of me? And I would always find the answer. And over time I got used to doing it. And then it really changed the way I interact with people. It became far less, more judgmental. I didn't jump to judgment and feeling like, annoyance toward people just naturally, like automatically all the time. And that just basically stopped happening because I was able to, or for whatever reason, I thought to look inside again and again and go, okay, what is it? What's in here? And I didn't even have to like fix or heal it. I just had to see it. I just had to see the mechanism, for me at least. And seeing the mechanism actually stopped it.
Well, it becomes a great kind of way of self-pointing too, because as we start to realize that, oh, I'm just like that, and I'm just like them, and I'm just like that, and this, and that sense of separation starts to fall away on its own. You're like, wait, what's different about me? Maybe there's this one little thing somewhere, but it becomes its own way of exploring the world, like, oh, is that me? Just asking, is that me? That's beautiful. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. Another sort of practice I picked up at one point. This was after awakening. Actually, it was a few years after awakening. I would do this. Like the doctrine of Buddha nature. Like essentially, Buddha said, as he stood up from under the Bodhi tree, like wonder of wonder, all beings are by nature Buddha. Right. This was his final awakening when he finally realized like all beings are by nature Buddha. They're literally Buddha nature. And when he saw that, of course, he recognized that as truth. So I thought, wow, okay, what if I look at everybody and see that they're Buddha nature, like literally everyone, and say like, that's Buddha nature appearing this way. That's Buddha nature appearing this way. And I really practiced it until I just naturally sort of felt that Buddha nature from people as I interacted with them. And it did change something about just the sense of self and other, as far as like just conventional interactions, and change the quality of experience, the quality of emotion of interacting with people. And then I kind of forgot about it for several years. And then later it sort of came back and without effort in a much deeper way, where it was like very clear that everyone is already Buddha nature, no matter how much apparent suffering is going on, how much apparent delusion is being expressed, that that is Buddha nature. It's not even hiding Buddha nature. It is Buddha nature because it's leading in no time at all, which, is eternity. That's the experience of now. It's leading that apparent being directly back to its source, like directly to its true nature. That is Buddha nature. It's beautiful is to recognize that. And maybe that's why I do what I do. I don't know. But yeah.
Yeah. Why do we do what we do? Oh.
There was one other thing I wanted to bring up, and I might have just lost it out of my mind, but no, can't remember.
Well, we can get it tomorrow.
For sure.
When we talk next. I think we've hit on so many good points about the crossing the threshold part of the hero's journey, and this first introduction to the unknown, to a willing look at the unknown. And it's a beautiful place to be, and like you had said earlier, we throughout our journeys and at different places, it's always helpful to be able to remember that this is the unknown, because there will always be things like fear and all those that crop up, or we'll just get distracted by one thing or another. Yet this is home, that unknown, that standing at the threshold. That it's not a threshold to a place you're going so much as a place you never leave.
Yes. And every step along the journey, every sort of stage of things we're going to talk about is already the whole journey too. And this becomes far clearer later on, but it is true that you may feel impatience here, you may feel something, but the truth of it is everything's an entry point. The impatience is the entry point. The confusion is the entry point, and you're already at every part of this destination. Like something in you already knows all of this, and in a way, you're just relearning it, reprocessing it, and such a beautiful thing.
Yeah, did we talk about this yesterday, or was it on a phone call about how it's kind of like fractals? The hero's journey.
Fractal like. Oh, I think that was maybe through messaging or we're leaving messages about it or something. Yeah.
Yeah, that there is that each you can look at your whole life like a hero's journey. You can look at any moment of your life as a part of a hero's journey, or you can just keep going deeper in, and the same form is arising.
Yeah,
that hero's journey form, and whether you zoom out or zoom in, it's pertinent, and it is a reminder, a pointer to who and what we are.
Absolutely. And it's also when we were talking about the fractal aspects, like it's also something that the more you get attuned to it, the more you go through these cycles, because everybody's been through some version of this. Everyone has. There's micro versions, there's macro versions. As I mentioned in the book, in my estimation, the awakening process and the way I talk about it and the way we talk about it and the way we've both gone through it is really the hero's journey of all hero's journeys. I mean, it's full on. It's every aspect in, Technicolor. But still, even that has its own sort of cycles within it, which are like mini hero's journeys that have these stages we talk about. But once you've gone through enough of that, at least what I find is, then you start to recognize the cyclic nature of everything that you've already known, but you feel it very synchronized. Like I do. I feel the seasons synchronized in these ways. I mean, I could make correlations to the seasons easily. And you just recognize it is very fractal-like. It doesn't matter how far you zoom in, doesn't matter how far you zoom out. And again, it's all home. Like it's all this kind of familiar mystery, this sort of empty intimacy, this radically fluid and adaptable stillness. you know,
Yeah.
yeah,
Those are all beautiful paradoxes that are right on.
yeah. All right, my friend. Well, I think we did a pretty good job on part 2, and we'll look forward to the next conversation. Um, yeah,
All right. We'll talk
cool,
soon.
man. Thank you.